Today we will gonna cover the show Arcane from beginning to end. Arcane is an animated steampunk action-adventure Netflix series created by Christian Link and Alex Ye. It is an American computer animated TV series with 9 episodes starting in 2021 and new season coming soon in 2024. It was produced by the French animation studio Fortich under the supervision of Riot Games, and distributed by Netflix. Set in Riot's League of Legends fictional universe, it primarily focuses on sisters Vi and Jinx. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. Young sisters Vi and Powder are seen amidst the aftermath of a devastating battle which took place upon the Bridge of Progress connecting Piltover and Zaun. The corpses of their parents lay among the fallen. Vander, who had led the Zaun revolutionaries into battle, takes pity on the 2 children and carries them to safety. Some years later, Vi leads Powder alongside their adoptive brothers Milo and Clagger on a heist that begins upon the rooftops of Piltover. Powder, the youngest of the group, is afraid to jump a gap between buildings, but Vi assures her that she's ready. Still, she nearly falters. They make their way to the balcony of an affluent Piltover penthouse, later revealed to be Jace's study. Vi forces the door open and they begin filling a bag with whatever valuables they come across. Powder discovers a cache of what she doesn't recognize as hex crystals, but Jace arrives outside the entrance. Milo bars the door with a chair while Vi rushes the group to grab what they can and get out. Powder pockets the crystals, but drops one in her haste. After rolling across the floor, it collides with a wall and shatters, resulting in a massive explosion which causes a portion of the outside wall to crumble and collapse onto the ground below. The children flee the scene, pursued by a squad of Piltover enforcers, though they make their escape by jumping into a garbage chute. On the way home, they're stopped by another group of urchins led by a boy named Deckard. Deckard insists they share some of the loot, but Vi swings the heavy bag of valuables into Deckard's face. She then tosses the bag to Powder while she, Milo, and Clagger engage in a fist fight with Deckard and his thugs. With the 3 of them distracted, one of the boys attempts to seize the bag from Powder, prompting her to run away on her own with the older boy in pursuit. Vi, Milo, and Clagger successfully defeat Deckard and the others, but Powder is backed into a dead end alone. She attempts to deploy a homemade grenade in order to halt her aggressor, but it ends up being a dud. She is ultimately forced to discard the bag of loot into the deep waters below in order to distract the boy while she escapes. Powder regroups with her siblings a short while later, where Milo bemoans the rotten luck of having lost their entire haul and accuses Powder of jinxing every job. They take an elevator down into Zaun and begin walking home. Meanwhile, Vander is tending bar at the Last Drop, where he lives with the 4 adopted children. He pours a pair of drinks for a patron named Huck, who sits down with a man named Vern and his associate, Jules. Vern declares that his business with Huck is concluded, and throws Huck a small sack of money. Huck is furious, stating that the sum is far less than what they agreed upon. Vern insists that his price is fair, and Jules makes a show of intimidating Huck by brandishing a short blade. Vander intervenes, asserting that Jules and Vern would not be allowed to leave his bar in one piece unless they honored their word to Huck. Vi, Powder, Milo, and Clagger arrive home moments later. Though Vi insists that Vander not learn of their failed heist, it becomes apparent that he already knows. Vander scolds Vi for her foolishness, reminding her that Piltover is off limits. After their argument gets heated, Vander tells the other kids to leave so that he and Vi can speak in private. He reprimands Vi for not understanding the gravity of her leadership role in the family, saying that she is ultimately responsible for the fates of her younger siblings. Vi wants to stand up for Zaun, but Vander insists that meddling with Piltover will only lead to more problems. He tells her that she'll have to lay low for a while. Vander takes Clagger and goes to have a word with Echo, or Little Man, who tipped Vi off to Jace's penthouse in the first place. Powder discovers that she still has several hex crystals in her pockets. She then overhears a conversation between Vi and Milo in which Milo belittles Powder once again. However, Powder leaves before she can hear the next part of the conversation, in which Vi defends Powder and criticizes Milo's own performance during the heist. Vander and Clagger arrive at Benzo's pawn shop, where Echo works. Benzo tells Echo to step outside so that he can speak with Vander. There, Clagger asks how Echo found Jace's penthouse, and Echo informs him that he followed Jace home after Jace made some purchases at Benzo's shop. 2 enforcers, Marcus and Grayson, suddenly approach from down the street. Clagger leaves in haste and Echo acts natural. The enforcers enter the shop and declare their intention of hunting down whoever caused the explosion. Benzo and Vander play coy, to which Marcus reacts angrily. Grayson tells Marcus to take a walk and cool off, and he does so. Echo climbs up to the building's 2nd floor, where he is able to spy on the ensuing conversation. He is surprised to learn that Grayson and Vander have a pre-established deal. Vander keeps his people off of Piltover's streets, and in return, the enforcers stay out of his business. Grayson beseeches Vander for information, saying that things will only escalate if she doesn't apprehend a suspect tonight, but Vander refuses. She gives him a capsule meant for a pneumatic messaging tube, saying that it will reach her if he changes his mind. Vi finds Powder brooding and berating herself for ruining everything. When Powder rejects Vi's attempts to comfort her, she brings Powder up to the roof and points out several locations around the city where Vi, Milo, and Clagger failed spectacularly in the past. Most notably, she points out her favorite childhood toy, a stuffed bunny hanging from a power line. She says that they've all had bad days, but the important thing is that they learn and stick together. Powder reveals that she still has the hex crystals, which Vi offers to keep their little secret. She assures Powder that she's stronger than she thinks, and that one day, this city will respect them. Meanwhile, in a reclusive laboratory, Deckard is manhandled by a group of adult thugs. Silco criticizes the boy's performance, saying that he was supposed to follow Vander's children without interfering. Deckard lies and says that he was the one ambushed. Silco implies that he would sooner kill Deckard than allow anyone to tie the boy back to him. But Deckard saves himself by revealing valuable information, that the children were behind the explosion in Piltover. The thugs escort Deckard away, leaving Silco alone with Singed. Silco asks for a demonstration of Singed's latest work, a bright purple liquid, later to be known as Shimmer. Singed places a cat inside the cage of a lab rat whose drinking water has been replaced with Shimmer. While the cat initially prowls, meaning to kill the smaller creature, the rat frantically drinks Shimmer and displays drastic physical changes as a result. Its eyes turn purple and it grows dramatically in size, easily killing the cat in one swift blow and even cracking the glass of the cage in the process. Singed asks if Silco has a subject in mind, to which Silco implies that he means to further test Shimmer on Deckard. Jace and Caitlin arrive at the penthouse only to find it in the process of being robbed. Jace attempts to force the door open, but the explosion triggered by the hex crystal knocks him unconscious. We flash back to a scene from Jace's childhood. He and his mother, Simna, are stranded alone in the wilderness in the wake of a brutal blizzard. Simna succumbs to the cold and collapses in the snow, prompting Jace to cry out desperately for help. A hooded figure approaches and begins weaving a fantastical arcane spell. Soon, the blizzard disappears, and flowers bloom as though it had never been snowing. Simna begins to regain her strength. Jace is baffled by the mage's power as the hooded figure leaves him with a now depleted hex crystal inscribed with a magical rune. Returning to the present day, enforcers are searching through the remains of Jace's half-destroyed penthouse. Grayson and Victor question Jace regarding the myriad of dangerous and illegal items found throughout the premises. Victor explains that he is the assistant of Heimerdinger, dean of the academy and head of the council, and that he was sent to ensure that anything dangerous is removed safely, including Jace himself. Jace is incarcerated in a Piltover jail, where Heimerdinger visits his cell and inquires into the nature of his research. Jace reveals that he was attempting to create magic, and Heimerdinger admonishes him, stating that the arcane is dangerous and cannot be controlled through science. He advises that if Jace simply owns his mistakes before the council and speaks nothing of magic, he'll be let off with a slap on the wrist. Vi, Powder, Milo, and Clagger take up residence in what appears to be an abandoned arcade, marking it as an ideal spot to lay low since enforcers never come down there. However, Marcus and a team of enforcers arrive just outside and begin questioning locals about the children. One man spits on Marcus's shoe, prompting the enforcers to violently throw him through the stained glass wall of the arcade. When Marcus sees the children within, he orders them searched. Milo taunts the enforcers, claiming that their search will be fruitless, but Powder anxiously clutches the pouch of hex crystals at her side, attracting the attention of Marcus. Clagger flips the light switch, darkening the arcade as the children begin their escape. After a brief altercation, they flee out the back door, only to find themselves surrounded in the alley. Luckily, Echo appears, offering a ladder leading up into a dark passageway. The kids kick down the ladder behind them, with Vi and Powder agreeing that they need to hide the crystals. Counselor Melmeter pores over various handheld puzzle boxes presented by a craftsman, intending to present one to Counselor Hoskell for his birthday. She discusses business, as well as Jace's upcoming trial, with her assistant, Alora. Mel laments that she needs something revolutionary to put Piltover on the map. Finally, she settles on a specific puzzle box, which the craftsman hesitantly calls a child's toy. Mel simply responds, "Good." Caitlin and her parents, Mr. Tobias Kuraman and Mrs. Cassandra Kuraman, discuss their responsibility to defend Jace in his time of need, as they are his patrons and have sponsored his work thus far. At the last drop, an impromptu community meeting has begun. A woman named Sevica argues that Zahn should fight back against the enforcers, while Vander encourages peace and solidarity, saying that this will all blow over. Sevica calls him weak and leads her people out of the bar. Vander's kids all agree that fighting is the best course of action and wonder why their father is so reluctant to act. Vi notices a guilty expression on Echo's face and pressures him into revealing what he knows. Vander has a deal with the enforcers. The 7 counselors convene within the council chambers in preparation of Jace's trial. As a birthday gift, Mel presents her puzzle box to Hoskell, falsely claiming that it was built only for the sharpest of minds. Hoskell is none the wiser and thanks Mel for the gift. Grayson arrives with Jace in tow and the trial begins. Mrs. Kuraman reads the charges against him: illegal experimentation and endangering the citizens of Piltover. Jace admits that his work was dangerous, asking for the council's forgiveness and permission to continue his studies. In the ensuing discussion, the council hammers him with questions and judgments until he can bear no more and admits his true purpose, trying to create magic. The council is dumbfounded, but Jace pleads his case. He believes magic can be created and controlled through science. However, Heimerdinger opines on the horrors that arcane power has bore throughout his lifetime. Ballbach states that the ethos is clear. Jace must be banished from Piltover. Simna comes forward from the audience. She claims that Jace is not in his right mind and pleads with the council to let her son come home. Heimerdinger moves that Jace be expelled from the academy and remanded to the care of his parents in place of banishment. Councilors Kuriman, Metterda, and Hoskell also vote in favor of the sentence, and thus the motion passes with a 4-3 majority. Silco orchestrates a meeting with Marcus. Though Marcus is suspicious of the stranger, Silco implies that he can help him find who he's looking for. Simna laments to Jace that if she had not spoken, he would have been banished. Jace reminds her that magic saved her life. Still, Simna urges him to abandon his hopes of creating it. He remarks that if his own family won't help him, he'll find someone who will. Victor helps Heimerdinger consolidate Jace's research with the intent to destroy it, but he expresses fascination with Jace's findings. Heimerdinger leaves Victor to lock up, which only allows him to examine Jace's work in greater detail. Silco offers Deckard a vial of shimmer. Deckard is reluctant, saying it'll kill him. Silco attempts to convince him, giving a speech about how true power only comes to those who will do anything to achieve it. At last, Deckard drinks the vial and undergoes a vast physical transformation, growing in size and strength, eyes and veins an unnatural purple. He shrieks in pain, overwhelmed. Jace visits the Kuriman estate, where he encounters Caitlin through the front gate. Caitlin begrudgingly explains that her parents have forbade her friendship with Jace. Her mother beckons her to come back inside, and Jace tries to apologize, but Mrs. Kuriman dismisses him. Grayson and Marcus meet with the council to update them on their progress with the investigation of the explosion. Grayson is reluctant to push the people of Zaun too hard, but the counselors pressure her to find the perpetrators no matter the cost, with Ballbach telling her to turn the Undercity upside down if you have to. Marcus brings a pair of enforcers into the last drop, confronting Vander and urging him to give up his children. He commands one officer to search the place. Vander reaches under the counter to get Marcus a drink, discreetly pressing a red button while he's at it. The button triggers a cymbal-banging monkey toy in the lower room, alerting the children to the presence of danger. When the enforcer enters the room, they find it dark and seemingly empty. Vi, Powder, Milo, Clagger, and Echo hide in the rafters above while the enforcer searches the room, though Powder struggles to keep her grip and very nearly loses it. She finally falls from the ceiling just as soon as the officer closes the door and leaves. They report back to Marcus, having found nothing. Enraged, Marcus threatens Vander and everyone in the bar, shattering his drink with a police baton before leaving. Vander goes to check on the kids and Vi angrily insists that the enforcers won't stop coming and that they need to fight back. Vander brings Vi to the Bridge of Progress, where her parents died. Vi continues to assert that she's willing to fight for change and that she wants a better life for Powder. Vander stresses that he felt the same way once, but that if he hadn't started a war, her parents would still be alive. He admits that he doesn't know what to do, but that he'll figure something out. Jace returns to the wreckage of his study. He gazes from the gaping hole in the wall onto the streets below and contemplates throwing himself from the edge. Victor interrupts, a book of Jace's notes in hand. He says that he's intrigued by what Jace said at the trial and wants to help complete his research. Jace is taken aback by Victor's encouragement, saying that he doesn't even know the man's name. He tells him it's Victor. Vi returns to the last drop and finds Powder working on smoke bombs and nail grenades for the enforcers, confident that her creations will work this time. Vi gives her the stuffed rabbit, apparently having retrieved it from the power line. She tells Powder that what makes her different makes her strong, and then departs. Grayson reprimands Marcus for going into the last drop, berating him as a fool, while Marcus argues that he was getting results. Grayson insists that a violent outbreak is now inevitable. In the midst of their argument, a pneumatic messaging tube delivers the capsule that Grayson gave Vander. Grayson remarks that it may not be too late. Powder takes the stuffed rabbit to the bar, where Vander pours her a drink. He sees the toy and silently comes to the realization that Vi is attempting to give herself up to the enforcers. Led by Grayson, enforcers march down the streets of Zaun. Vi breaks into and sits alone in Benzo's shop, waiting for them to arrive. She hears footsteps outside, the door opens, and her eyes widen in surprise. Silco recalls a story of when Vander tried to kill him via drowning, the incident which led to his deformed eye. He reflects on how it changed his perspective, and contemplates his gratitude towards Vander for doing it. Vander and Benzo arrive at the pawn shop to find Vi sitting alone and waiting for the enforcers to take her. Vander shoves her into the back room and locks the door, where she begins banging and screaming to be let out. Grayson and Marcus arrive moments later, waiting for Vander's response. In Vi's place, Vander offers himself up to be arrested. Grayson argues that she needs Vander to remain and keep the peace, or else it all falls apart. He retorts that Benzo will handle things, saying that it's the only way. Marcus handcuffs Vander while Vi continues her protests. Vi hears and do commotion and tries to look out a small window. Marcus shouts for someone to stop, and a sudden splatter of blood obscures Vi's vision. Grayson and several other enforcers lie dead on the ground, killed by a shimmer-crazed Deckard. The monster disappears as quickly as it had arrived, leaving Marcus, Vander, and Benzo confused and on high alert. Finally, Silco reveals himself and Benzo steps forward to attack him, but Deckard emerges once again to kill Benzo with inhuman strength and speed. Marcus is stunned, shouting that this wasn't the deal. Silco dismissively replies that the deal has changed and tosses Marcus a sack of coins. Deckard knocks Vander unconscious with a punch to the face and drags him away, following Silco, leaving both Marcus and Vi to stew in distress alone. Jace and Victor are deep in study and arrive at a calculation that could stabilize the hex crystals. Jace laments that they could test it if only they had access to his equipment, which is currently locked away in Heimerdinger's lab and is set to be destroyed the following day. Victor brandishes Heimerdinger's keys, but Jace fervently disapproves of stealing back his equipment, as he knows it would put both of them at risk of banishment from Piltover. Victor provides encouragement, stating that this Hextech dream of yours has the potential to make the world a better place. Inspired, Jace corrects him, our Hextech dream. Echo arrives to free Vi from the pawn shop, declaring that he saw everything. Both in tears, they embrace, and Vi asks where they took Vander. The effects of Shimmer wear off on Deckard, returning him to a normal yet nauseous state. Vander begins to wake up as a thug drags him across a catwalk overlooking a workshop where Silco's workers are forging metal weapons and mass-producing Shimmer. Silco and Vander vehemently argue the merits of a violent revolution. Silco explains that violence is a crude but necessary tool to liberate Zon. Regarding Vander as a traitor to the cause, Vander retorts that the sacrifices of war aren't worth the reward. The pair also reflect on Vander's betrayal of Silco, with Vander claiming that he's never forgiven himself for what he did. In the end, Silco's thug takes Vander to be locked away, but before he goes, Vander sees that Sevica is here under Silco's employ. In the black of night, Victor and Jace arrive at Heimerdinger's lab. Victor begins unlocking the door when a flashlight ignites on them, wielded by Mel, who seems impressed at the men's conviction. They scramble to convince Mel of Hextech's potential while a security guard is heard approaching. Mel relents, telling them that they have one night to impress her or to expect exile. She then moves to engage the guard in conversation and steer him away from Heimerdinger's lab. Finally, Victor unlocks the door. At the last drop, Milo and Clagger are ready to fight the enforcers while Powder is on Arcane's bed with the stuffed rabbit, depressed. Vi then returns and explains to her siblings that Benzo is dead and Vander has been kidnapped. Describing the horror of the monster she saw, she resolves to help Vander, revealing that Echo followed Silco to his workshop. As the kids get ready to join her in saving Vander, Vi tells Powder that she can't come along because it's too dangerous. Powder argues, but Vi is adamant, telling her she isn't ready. She gives Powder a flare, instructing her to run if someone comes for her, and wherever she lights it, Vi will find her. Then, she departs along with Milo and Clagger. Jace prepares the machine that will activate the Hex Crystal. As it whirs to life, he expresses doubts that it will hold, but Victor assures him that it will stabilize. The crystal emanates a blue glow, bright enough to become visible to the enforcers on the streets below. Powder suffers a mental breakdown, screaming and sobbing in pain and rage, and throwing a cymbal-banging monkey toy at the wall and breaking it. She throws a bag to the ground, and several hex crystals roll out. Gradually, she begins to calm down as she realizes that one of them was responsible for the explosion at Jace's apartment and comes up with a plan to help her family. Vi, Milo, and Clagger stealthily scale the side of Silco's workshop and drop inside through a broken ceiling window. Back in Heimerdinger's lab, the crystal stabilizes and begins to levitate a small distance from its casing, which Jace remarks it's never done before. He turns a dial and several metal panels inscribed with runes begin to rotate on the machine. The crystal levitates higher and higher until suddenly, it releases a pulse of force powerful enough to make Jace and Victor put their arms up to shield themselves. The force continues, and Victor shouts for Jace to disengage, whom struggles to reach for the switch under the intensity of the force. Another pulse shatters the laboratory's windows, glass exploding outward, and yet another pulls the glass back in. Shards fly towards the two men, one cutting Jace's cheek as he finally deactivates the machine. Vi, Milo, and Clagger sneak across the catwalk and come to a small room where Vander is locked to a chair via padlocks and metal restraints on all four limbs. Milo begins picking the locks and Vander asks how they managed to get in with so many guards everywhere. Vi explains how easy it was, and they both realize that they've walked into a trap. Silco appears, welcoming them from the other side of the catwalk with a large group of henchmen at his back. Vi instructs Clagger to find another way out as she straps on Vander's metal gauntlets to, against Vander's wishes, fight Silco's henchmen. Powder arrives outside the workshop. Peering through a crevice, she sees Vi hold up her fists as the first of Silco's henchmen approaches her and climbs up on an outside wall. The man strikes out with a knife, but Vi blocks and retaliates with an uppercut to the jaw that puts him on his back. The other henchmen begin to swarm towards Vi, but she deftly defeats several of them in succession. Milo cracks the first lock, freeing Vander's leg. Clagger discovers that one of the walls leading outside is structurally weak. Powder stops at a ledge where she's level with the catwalk and can see into the workshop through a hole in the wall. After seeing Vi knock out numerous henchmen, Sebica moves to join the fray, but Silco stops her. He retrieves a vial of shimmer and gives it to Deckard, who drinks it down greedily. Once again, he transforms into a hulking monstrosity. Barely able to control himself, he throws another henchman off the catwalk with impossible ease. Vander urges Milo to hurry. For a moment, Deckard looks dazed. Vi takes the opportunity to go in for a forceful blow with both gauntlets, but Deckard grabs her by the neck with superhuman speed. Vander pleads Silco to spare Vi, but Silco rebuffs. Deckard throws Vi to the ground, knocking off one of the gauntlets. She crawls back to the room with Vander, slides the metal door shut, and locks it in place. Two enforcers, backed by Heimerdinger, attempt to force open the doors to the professor's lab, but Victor has barred them together with his cane. With no time left to spare, Jace closes his eyes and recalls the motions of the mage who saved his mother, dialing the switch accordingly. Several runes lock in place as one final, massive pulse of energy lifts Victor and Jace from the floor. Victor's cane snaps in two as the enforcers force the doors open. Heimerdinger and the officers enter the lab to see a dazzling display of soft blue light filling the space. Jace, Victor, and numerous objects are suspended in midair as if floating in water. Heimerdinger can hardly believe his eyes. They've succeeded in creating magic. But he asserts that this is not what Piltover's future looks like. Nell appears in the doorway and retorts that it is for the council to decide, and that perhaps it's time for the era of magic. Jace corrects her, the era of Hextech. Powder shovels multiple hex crystals into the body of the cymbal-banging monkey toy, while Deckard is beginning to make dents in the door. Clagger is slowly dismantling a weak wall with a metal pipe, and looses a single brick, giving him a tiny window outside. Powder winds up the monkey toy, reaches through a hole in the wall to set it in place. It walks toward Deckard, steadily clapping a crystal between its cymbals. Deckard notices the toy and pauses to examine it, befuddled. Milo cracks the final lock to release Vander, and Clagger pushes away bricks until there's a human-sized hole in the wall. One final time, the monkey claps, and the gem explodes. Powder is knocked from her ledge. Sebica rushes to push Silco out of the way and gets caught in the explosion, losing her left arm. A flammable trail of shimmer residue ignites all the way back to Singed's lab, consuming him in flames. One of the crystals ricochets into the ceiling of the room, propelling metal shrapnel into Milo and Clagger's bodies and burying them under debris as the roof collapses on top of them. As Powder is falling, she is in awe of the explosion. Varka sees the explosion in the distance. Vander is trapped under debris, but alive. Deckard gets back on his feet, merely stunned, and Silco orders his remaining henchmen to kill Vi and Vander. Vi is sobbing, crushed beneath the collapsed metal door. Vander summons all of his strength and pushes the debris off of himself, quickly knocking a henchman senseless as he approaches. He retrieves two metal hooks and dons them as improvised brass knuckles, dispatching a second henchman easily, and makes his way to Deckard. Vi sobs more upon seeing Milo and Clagger dead in the head of the monkey toy, knowing it was Powder's. While Deckard's strength is immense, Vander holds his own until Silco stabs him with a dagger from behind. Vander whips around and takes Silco by the neck, but Silco stabs him again and his strength fails him. He goes limp, and Silco gently pushes him off the catwalk. Vander crashes on top of a crate full of shimmer vials, barely able to move, though he weakly reaches for a vial of shimmer right after Silco orders Deckard to find Vi. Deckard easily lifts the metal door off of Vi and tosses it aside. However, Vander reappears, now transformed by shimmer and much larger than Deckard. He grabs Deckard and pins him to the wall by the throat, squeezing until his body goes limp and discarding him to the side. He then screams out Silco's name, but the flames engulfing the building are reaching dangerously close to Vi. Rather than pursue Silco, he swiftly grapples Vi and crashes through the wall with her, plummeting to the ground below. Vi holds Vander's head in her hands. He tells her to take care of Powder before his eyes loll back, presumably dead. Vi shrieks in agony at the loss of her adoptive father. Moments later, Powder appears, excitedly proclaiming that her monkey bomb finally worked. However, she sees Vander's body and Clagger's bloodstained goggles on the ground, and slowly realizes what happened. She begins crying, pleading that she only wanted to help. Vi is furious, reminding Powder that she told her to stay away. She hits Powder, and after Powder asks and screams why she left her, she tells her she's Jinx and that Milo was right. Powder merely unravels into tears and fragmented begging. Realizing that she's gone too far, Vi walks away to burn off her anger, Powder calling her name all the while, and collapses against a wall in exhaustion. Believing Vi abandoned her, Powder goes into another mental breakdown, sobbing. Silco turns a corner and finds Powder. When Vi sees Silco standing over her sister, she attempts to rush back to her side, but Marcus catches her from behind. He holds a drug cloth over her nose and mouth, lulling her unconscious and dragging her away as he assures her that Silco will kill her if Silco's remaining henchmen meet up with him, and one of them is carrying an unconscious Sebica. Silco asks Powder where her sister is while hiding a knife behind his back. Powder responds by leaping into Silco's arms so forcefully that it knocks him to the ground and makes him drop the knife. Still crying, she says that Vi left her and that she's not her sister anymore. After a moment of hesitation and realizing her situation is similar to the one he had once when Vandar betrayed him, Silco wraps his arms around Powder and comforts her, saying, "It's okay, we'll show them." Several years after the events of the previous episode, Jace enters Heimerdinger's office. They speak of the upcoming Progress Day, a holiday marking the anniversary of Piltover's founding. The city is about to turn 200 years old. Jace inquires about a statue of a man named Stanwyck Pittedly, to which Heimerdinger explains that Stanwyck is remembered not for his own work, but for the contributions of his students. Heimerdinger informs Jace that while typically tossing them in with the many other flowers she's received during her recovery, she explains her findings. She believes that the perpetrators of the failed smuggling operation were also responsible for the recent attack. Nearly all of the Undercity's ongoing violence, she reasons, can be traced back to a single source. Jace is unsure if any of her theories can be proven. He reveals that he's been made a counselor and asks her to join his security team, since her parents have now had her discharged from the enforcers. She rejects his charity and tells him to leave. Caitlin takes a ferry to Stillwater Prison and asks to speak with the henchman she found aboard the airship, inmate 2135. The warden reveals that the inmate was assaulted and is unable to speak due to his injuries. Instead, Caitlin goes to talk with the prisoner who attacked him. Alone in a cell on the 40th basement level, she finds this prisoner, Vi. We flash back to a scene from Caitlin's childhood. She charges through a forest with a rifle, quickly but carefully shooting small wooden targets as metal arms thrust them into view, racing against Grayson to see who can be faster. Finally, she shoots the last target, but sees Grayson taking aim and holding her shot against the same one. Later, a party celebrates Caitlin's victory, but she leaves her trophy on a set of stairs and confronts Grayson outside, asking if her parents paid Grayson to let her win. Grayson is coy at first, but admits that while she wasn't paid, she did let Caitlin win, simply because she thought the child deserved it. She explains that, as an enforcer, learning to shoot allows her to protect people, which is reward enough, and asks Caitlin what she's shooting for. Back in the present day, Caitlin interrogates Vi, but Vi answers all of her questions sarcastically, giving her nothing. Frustrated, Caitlin starts to leave, with Vi telling her to give Silco a kiss. Caitlin returns, asking about Silco, but Vi remains obstinate. Hesitantly, Caitlin steps over a red line on the ground, getting close enough that Vi can reach her through the metal bars. She shows Vi a picture of Jinx's monkey drawings from the crime scenes. Suddenly interested, Vi asks where Caitlin got this. Caitlin asks if inmate 2135 worked for Silco. Vi is incredulous that she didn't already know this, saying they all do. Caitlin asks for proof, and Vi says she can get it, but not from within a jail cell. Caitlin is reluctant to trust Vi and goes to leave. Later, she returns with orders from Jace for Vi's release. Marcus delivers a somber speech at the funeral of the 6 enforcers killed by Jinx. He and his daughter, Ren, also visit Grayson's grave. Later, in Silco's office, Marcus furiously argues with Silco over the deaths of his enforcers. He wants to arrest Jinx, arguing that Silco can't control her. Silco instead suggests that he pins these crimes on the firelights. Marcus is reluctant to play along, but begrudgingly accepts. Jace goes through the Hexgate logs and finds far more discrepancies than he anticipated. Victor is wholly uninterested in Jace's politics and wants him to refocus on science, reminding him that the people who need their help can't wait. Marcus arrives, and Jace is aggressive in his push for Marcus to take this corruption seriously, providing him with a list of suspicious transactions. Marcus tells him that the firelights are their chief suspect. Victor loses focus, coughing up blood as his vision becomes hazy. Jace asks if he's alright, but Victor brushes him off and returns to the lab. Jinx prepares a hexstick device based on Jace and Victor's notes, but as she activates it, it emits a powerful pulse of light and energy, somewhat resembling the explosion that killed her family. Unable to bear the painful reminder, she flees the device in tears. Caitlin brings Vi to a train leading down into Zon, but Vi says the train would be too risky. She begins leaping across rooftops, deftly running into the city below. Reluctantly, Caitlin follows her, but isn't nearly as light on her feet, navigating the climb slowly and clumsily. On the ground, a pair of street thugs confront Vi, but she dispatches them before Caitlin finally catches up with her. Vi dons one of the thugs' jackets and tosses the other's clothing to Caitlin so that she can change out of her enforcer uniform. Back in the lab, Victor theorizes that Hexstick can be made to learn and adapt rather than be bound to a single function. He tinkers with a levitating device covered in interchangeable runes, later referred to as the Hex Core. Jace asks if he's sure this is safe, to which Victor responds, of course not. Vi takes Caitlin to a food stall run by a man named Jericho and voraciously wolfs down a bowl of cooked fish covered in sauce. She asks Vi what information Jericho can offer, but Vi reveals that she was simply hungry. However, Jericho slides Vi a napkin on which he's drawn a sigil. Vi takes the napkin and the pair depart. Jace and Mel attend a theater performance, sitting in a mezzanine box while a musician plays a unique-looking hybrid instrument. Mel warns Jace that by tightening security, he's made himself an enemy of various merchants, including the other counselors, who had previously been able to use their wealth and influence to break certain trade laws with impunity. Jinx revisits the abandoned arcade from her childhood, which appears to have remained untouched in the years since her last visit. She restores a punching machine whose scoreboard is covered in Vi's name. Memories of her sister bubble to the surface once again as she furiously takes out her frustration on the machine. At last, her name appears second on the scoreboard, just short of Vi's high score. Vi sees that the last drop has been taken over by Silco and is moved to anger. Caitlin remarks on how shady the place looks, but Vi rebuts her, saying, "You don't know anything." Back at the theater, Jace is reluctant to compromise the safety of the Hex Gates for what he views as the other counselor's corruption. But Mel assures him that he'd simply be doing favors amongst friends, and as a symbol of the future, he has the potential to shape his own destiny. Amara, one of the merchants he inadvertently crossed, arrives at Mel and Jace's box, bemoaning how she'd been confronted by enforcers that morning. Mel assures her that Jace is willing to reinstate former trade privileges to those who share his vision. Finally, Jace plays along, striking a deal with Amara. Jace agrees to restore her trade privileges as Mel suggested and further entices Amara with exclusive perks from his Hextech enterprise as a partner in exchange for her financial and political support. One by one, he visits the other counselors in their boxes, making similar arrangements with each one, much to Mel's pleasure. Vi and Caitlin visit a brothel whose door is marked with the sigil given to them by Jericho. Caitlin, clearly out of her element, asks Vi what's her plan. Vi suggests Caitlin pretend to be a prostitute, but Caitlin scoffs at the idea. Vi advises her that the way to make people talk to her is to act like you have what they want. Caitlin asks what she has, to which Vi responds, "You're hot." Cupcake. She grabs a patron by the arm, who introduces himself as Pim, and leaves him to mingle with Caitlin. She enters the office of the brothel's madam, Babette, who is shocked to see her. Marcus visits Silco's office, warning him that Jace is now a counselor and is on the path to discovering Marcus and Silco's relationship. Silco offers him one of Jinx's grenades, suggesting he pass it off as proof of the Firelight's guilt. Marcus laments that this has gone too far and imagines himself pulling the grenade's pin, killing himself and Silco. Silco dares him to do it, but in the end, he simply walks away. Silco tells Jinx, who is once again listening from the rafters, that she needs to weaponize Hextech soon. Jinx asserts that she is unable due to her trauma association with the Hex Crystal, but Silco is insistent. Babette tells Vi that no one has been able to stop Silco since Vander's death. Vi asks about Powder, but Babette knows nothing. However, she reveals that Sevica is a regular at the brothel and offers to have one of her staff, Miguel, tell Vi where to find her. As Vi leaves the brothel, she sees Caitlin chatting with another patron, looking far more comfortable and relaxed than when she arrived. Mel commends Jace for his work at the theater and they fondly discuss the future of Hextech. Suddenly, Mel kisses him. Meanwhile, Victor continues experimenting with the Hex core, unable to figure out why it isn't working. His assistant, Sky, offers to walk him home, but he rejects her, saying he's going to sleep in the lab tonight. He resumes his work, eventually getting frustrated and throwing his notes in the air. At that moment, his vision becomes hazy once again, and he coughs blood onto the table. Mel and Jace go to bed together. Victor collapses, unconscious, as his blood reacts to the Hex core. It begins pooling towards the core until a single drop levitates off the table and begins weaving itself into the fabric of the device. Silco takes Jinx to the waters where Vander tried to drown him. He explains that he let a weak man die on that day, and a new one was reborn. If Jinx wishes to overcome her pain, he says she needs to let Powder die. He tells her to be strong, saying that Jinx is perfect. Finally, he submerges her in the river as if baptizing her. Vi finds Sevica gambling over a game of cards. Marcus ponders the grenade given to him by Silco, alongside a framed drawing by his daughter. Enraged, he shatters his drink. Mel wakes up alone, realizing that Jace is gone. Jace sits next to a hospital bed, where Victor lies unconscious. As Victor wakes up, Jace struggles to explain what the doctors told him. Victor fills in the gaps, asking how much time he has left. Vi interrupts Sevica's card game with a knee to the face. Sevica's opponents grab a handful of coins and run. Sevica removes her cloak, revealing a mechanical prosthetic arm, able to her inject her with shimmer on command. They fight relentlessly, Vi eventually pinning Sevica to the ground. She asks where her sister is, and Sevica says that Jinx works for Silco now. This shocks Vi enough for her to let her guard down momentarily, and Sevica stabs her in the gut with knife-like mechanical fingers. She's about to kill Vi, but takes a shot to the shoulder from Caitlin's rifle and flees. Caitlin helps Vi to her feet and the two hobble away. Jinx finally solves Hextech, creating a machine similar to the one Jace built when he first unlocked its potential. A wounded Sevica shuffles back to Silco's office, leaking shimmer on the floor. She tells Silco that Vi is back. Silco is dumbfounded, having believed the girl was dead. We flash back to a scene from Victor's childhood. While other children swim in the water, Victor winds up a mechanical toy boat. He is seen briefly by Sky, but the girl soon returns to playing with the other kids. Victor sets the boat in the water and it begins sailing downstream. As it picks up speed with the current, Victor is unable to keep up with it due to his bad leg. It descends into a cave, but Victor follows it. When it finally comes to rest, it is found by Singed, who is sitting in the cave with his pet wave rider, Rio. Victor inquires about the creature. Vi attempts to calm both parties down, but Jinx becomes hostile, surmising that Vi is playing a cruel trick. Vi continuously refers to her sister as Powder, causing her to angrily assert that her name is Jinx now. She accuses Vi of manipulating her in order to obtain the Hex Crystal, but Vi insists she doesn't even recognize the gemstone. Jinx hears a strange noise in the distance, and suddenly, the firelights appear. Jinx opens fire on the masked hoverboarders, with Vi covering her back and fighting to fend them off. Caitlyn seizes the Hex Crystal before it can roll off the tower, but is then knocked unconscious by a firelight. As the battle continues, Vi is disturbed at how unhinged and violent her sister has become, and while Vi is distracted, a firelight knocks her out as well. Another firelight slashes at Jinx's leg, leaving a gash. Finally, the gangsters deploy a smoke bomb and disappear with Caitlyn and Vi. Having lost her sister once again, Jinx cries out in agony. Caitlyn and Vi wake up handcuffed to metal pipes and blinded by burlap sacks over their heads. They argue briefly until someone enters the room and takes Vi away, leaving Caitlyn alone. One of the firelights removes the sack from Vi's head and leaves her alone with the gang's leader. The leader removes his mask, revealing himself to be Echo. Echo explains that he thought Vi was dead and begins to question her, still unsure if he can trust her. Vi is adamant that she knows nothing about the Hextech gemstone and that she isn't working for Silco. Eventually, she shirks off her handcuffs and embraces Echo in a hug, saying that she missed him. After realizing that she's still the same Vi he used to know, Echo reciprocates, shedding a single tear as he does. After examining Victor's research, Singed offers him a vial containing a variant of Shimmer, which he claims will allow him to survive a violent transition. However, he warns Victor that taking this path will cause the Topsiders to despise him, revealing that he parted ways with Heimerdinger for similar reasons. Victor takes the Shimmer, telling himself that Jace will understand. Jace is hard at work at the forge when Mel approaches him. He shows her the grenade given to him by Marcus, showing disbelief at the quality of its engineering. He also expresses guilt for having betrayed his former mentor, Heimerdinger, but Mel assures him that he did the right thing. Sevica informs Silco that Marcus has shut down the border between Piltover and Zon, and that the Chem Barons have called for an assembly. Silco says he needs to find Jinx, but Sevica suggests that she'll reappear when she's ready. Jinx returns to her workshop and begins stitching the gash in her leg while arguing with the voice of Milo in her head. Milo berates her, but Jinx tries to stay positive, telling herself that Vi came back for her, not the crystal. Echo introduces Vi to his new home, a small, sequestered settlement centered around a massive tree. He explains that the settlement has become a refuge for victims of Shimmer. He shows Vi a large, painted mural commemorating their dead. It prominently features Violet, Powder, Milo, Clagger, Vander, Benzo, and numerous others. Someone is in the process of adding the pink-haired girl that reminded Jinx of Violet. Echo tries to convince Vi that Powder is gone and that Jinx can't be saved. But Vi refuses to give up on her sister. A riot has broken out at the border, with enforcers struggling to hold the line. Victor sits on the Piltover side, and Jace arrives on Marcus's notice. Jace admonishes Victor for the optics of his own partner violating the blockade, but Victor is baffled that Jace is the one who ordered it. Victor explains that he was visiting Zon in search of someone he knew who could help save his life. Jace asserts that people from the Undercity are dangerous, but Victor angrily reminds him that he's from the Undercity. He also lies, saying that this friend of his was unable to offer any assistance. The Chem Barons hold their assembly: Finn, Smeech, Cross, Rennie, and Margit. Finn bemoans that with the border shut down, the Barons are bleeding money, and he decries Silco for losing control. Finally, Silco arrives with Sevica. Finn and the others question him, suggesting that they cut a deal with Topsiders and return the gemstone. In response, Sevica dons a gas mask, turns off the ceiling fan, and drops a metal tank which begins filling the room with an invisible gas. The other Barons begin coughing and choking, but Silco seems immune to its effects as he distributes gas masks to everyone except Finn. He lectures the Barons, reminding them that the Undercity had nothing before he gave them a taste of Topside. Eventually, Finn collapses on the floor, begging Silco for the final mask. Silco takes a deep breath through the mask before finally bequeathing it to Finn. At last, Sevica restarts the ceiling fan and swings the doors open, airing out the room. Having made his point, Silco takes his leave. Alora brings a letter to Mel, and Mel instantly recognizes the binding wax seal as her family crest. A masked child removes Caitlyn's restraints and offers her a bowl of water, but she swats it from the child's hand. Echo, sitting in the doorway, dismisses the child. Caitlyn begins to negotiate for Vi's release, but Vi appears behind Echo, free and unharmed. Echo explains that Vi has vouched for Caitlyn, and so he'll allow her to return to Piltover. Jinx reappears before Silco, seizing the device he uses to inject Shimmer into his deformed eye. Silco claims he only wanted to protect Jinx, accusing Vi of returning only for the crystal, not for her sister. He reminds Jinx that he found her and gave her a home after Vi left her. Visibly distressed, Jinx finally uses the device for its intended purposes, injecting Silco's eye with Shimmer and storming out of the room. Echo and Caitlyn get into a heated argument. Echo claims that Silco pays the enforcers to hunt his people like animals, but Caitlyn doesn't believe it. He confronts her about the gemstone, and she explains its purpose, that it can be used to build any hextech device. Echo wants to use it to fight back against Silco, but Caitlyn believes she can bring an end to the conflict if she can present the crystal to Jace and the council. After some convincing, Echo agrees on one condition, that he deliver the crystal himself. Victor carefully dismantles Jinx's grenade. Mel theorizes that someone in Zaun may be weaponizing hextech and suggests that Jace and Victor build their own weapons. Victor passionately rejects the idea, arguing that they invented hextech to improve lives, not to take them. Jace, however, is conflicted. In his distress, Victor nearly sets off the grenade, but cuts a wire and deactivates it. Heimerdinger dons a cloak and sails across the river to Zaun. Echo says his goodbyes to the Firelights and leaves along with Vi and Caitlyn. They see a swarm of insects which glow with an eerie green light. Vi tells Caitlyn, who has never seen them before, that the creatures are called Firelights. Jace discovers a drawing he made as a child, depicting himself as a hero wielding a large mechanical hammer. He hugs his mother, lamenting that he may have to do something he never thought he would. Victor retrieves the vial of shimmer he received from Singed, hidden in the handle of his crutch. He carves runes into his leg brace as well as his own skin. Finally, he injects himself with the drug and cuts open his hand, feeding his blood to the hex core. He screams in pain as shimmer and magic infuse into his bloodstream, beginning a violent transition. Echo, Vi, and Caitlyn begin to cross the Bridge of Progress back to Piltover, but Vi stops. She says that she needs to go back for her sister, and leaves Echo and Caitlyn to go ahead without her. Jinx is perched high upon the bridge's supports, watching them with great interest through a spyglass. Echo and Caitlyn encounter the blockade, enforcers commanding them to halt. Caitlyn sees Marcus and flashes her badge, saying she is proof that Silco is behind everything. Not seeing any other option, Echo brandishes the canister containing the gemstone. Marcus steps forward and shoots Echo in the torso, training his pistol on Caitlyn and picking up the canister as the boy collapses. Hearing the gunshot, Vi doubles back to rejoin her friends. Marcus seems to struggle internally, knowing he needs to kill Caitlyn to protect himself, but appearing unable to do so. Mysteriously, a swarm of firelights descends on the scene. Closer inspection reveals that the insects are mechanical replicas, and without warning, they explode, wreaking havoc on the blockade. Jinx arrives in the wake of the false firelights, which were apparently by her design. With her shock pistol, she executes a struggling enforcer. Many others lay dead. Caitlyn attempts to stand, but her leg is wounded. Marcus begins to speak and dies mid-sentence. Vi rushes to Caitlyn's side and helps her to her feet. Jinx retrieves the canister and slings it over her shoulder. Upon seeing Vi and Caitlyn, she is enraged, believing Caitlyn to be a corrupting influence bent on turning Vi against her. She fires Pow Pow at the pair, forcing them to jump out of the way. Echo appears on his hoverboard, having survived Marcus's shot via a metal plate hidden under his clothes. He knocks the minigun out of Jinx's hands and steals back the canister, throwing it to Vi and Caitlyn and telling them to go. Reluctantly, the pair shuffle away, leaving Echo behind to fight Jinx. Jinx fires her shock pistol, but Echo remembers a game he played with Powder when they were kids, and uses it to predict and dodge Jinx's shots. He tackles her, pins her to the ground, and beats her viciously. However, seeing Jinx's bloodied nose and frightened expression causes him to momentarily hesitate, taking pity on the girl he once knew. Jinx takes the opportunity to pull a grenade's pin. Both of them are engulfed in the resulting explosion. We flash back to a scene from Mel's childhood. She stands amidst the wreckage of a crumbling throne room. Her mother, Ambessa, joins Mel in the room and begins lecturing her, extolling the virtues of war. Moments later, 2 Noxian guards enter, escorting a young woman as their prisoner, apparently a member of the newly dismantled royalty. Mel encourages her mother to show mercy, but Ambessa beheads the prisoner with one swipe of her blade. Back in the present day, Mel awakes from the apparent dream, startled by the painful memory. Above her bed is a large painting of the prisoner's necklace on the ground and covered in blood. She sees Jace next to her, still asleep. Caitlyn and Vi make their way back into Piltover, evading squads of enforcers as the police rush to the Bridge of Progress. Caitlyn opens the canister and realizes that the hex crystal is missing. Silco arrives at the bridge, sees Jinx's body lying amongst the wreckage. He rushes to her side, finding the hex crystal in her limp hand. He carries her back to Zaun. That morning, Jace and Mel arrive at the Bridge of Progress. Upon seeing the enforcers' many corpses, Jace vomits into the water below. While bent down, he sees the remnants of one of the mechanical firelights. Vi and Caitlyn sneak into the latter's bedroom through the window. Mrs. Kuriman kicks the door down, pointing a rifle at the pair as if she were expecting intruders, but is surprised to find Caitlyn instead. Mr. Kuriman embraces his daughter, relieved to see her safe. Mrs. Kuriman asks to speak to Caitlyn in private. Mr. Kuriman begins to remove the shrapnel from Caitlyn's leg. Mrs. Kuriman reprimands Caitlyn for her recklessness, but Caitlyn admonishes her mother, a counselor, for her role in creating the squalid conditions she witnessed in Zaun. After some convincing, Mrs. Kuriman agrees to allow Caitlyn and Vi to make their case before the council. Silco bursts into Singed's lab carrying Jinx, still unconscious, and they strap her down to an operating table. Singed claims that he can save her, but that the process will be demanding. Silco assures him that Jinx can handle it and implores him not to let her die. Singe surprises Silco with a syringe to the neck, anesthetizing Silco for the sake of his sanity. As Silco fades, Singe claims that he too once had a daughter. Sevika is sitting alone in the last drop, drinking and repairing her prosthetic arm. Finn sits across from her and strikes up a conversation. He expresses disappointment in Silco's performance and asks her to consider turning against him. Sevika is resistant to the idea, but Finn leaves her to think about it. Ambessa arrives in Piltover on a Noxian ship, accompanied by a host of soldiers. Mel and Alora meet her as she deboards. Ambessa attempts to frame her arrival as an innocent family visit, but Mel is suspicious of her mother and still harbors anger since Ambessa banished her over a decade prior. Ambessa informs her that Mel's brother, Kino, is dead, having crossed the wrong man. She reveals her ulterior motive. She wants her hands on Hextech weaponry, but Mel refuses to oblige. A young male escort arrives, and Ambessa departs at his side. Caitlin returns to her bedroom, where Vi had been waiting, and informs her that they'll present their case to council that night. Vi laments on how badly she misses her younger sister and expresses regret for failing her, while Caitlin simply listens intently. Jinx wakes up in Singe's lab, racked by incredible pain. Singe injects her with Shimmer, and Jinx begins to see vivid hallucinations of Vi, herself, and Caitlin. In the visions, Vi betrays Jinx and replaces her with Caitlin. Singe remarks that the pain will only get worse, and Jinx conflates him with the image of Caitlin. She screams in agony. Later, Silco comes to his senses. He groggily examines Jinx's operation table. The girl is gone, but the table is still covered in dirt and blood. He holds a scalpel to Singe's neck, asking what he did to her. Singe replies that he saved her life. A cloaked Heimerdinger walks through the streets of Zon, taking in the depth of the city's poverty and violence. A young child approaches and gives him a handful of nuts and bolts as a gift. Hoping to impress her, Heimerdinger performs a sleight of hand trick to magically replace the scrap metal with a spinning top. However, the girl's mother angrily takes her away from the stranger. He returns to the Bridge of Progress and discovers Echo's hoverboard on the ground, remarking on its ingenious design. Echo is sitting against the bridge's supports, clutching an injured leg. He recognizes Heimerdinger, asking what he's doing on this side of the bridge. Heimerdinger bemoans that after losing his counselorship, he wanted to offer Zon his assistance, but that he's not welcome. Echo laughs, saying that he's having the exact same day. Heimerdinger tells Echo that his wounds look serious and that he requires medical attention. Echo replies that the professor is holding his ride. Jace meets Ambessa, who is enjoying a hot bath at a bathhouse. She strongly encourages him to build Hextech weaponry. Though he is initially dismissive of her advice, she seems to convince him of the real dangers posed by the Undercity and implores him to listen to the experience she has gained through age. The council convenes, processing the revelation that Marcus had been secretly working against them. Caitlin and Vi arrive, informing the council that Silco is behind everything and is working to achieve Zon's independence. Jace presents Jinx's grenade, asking who created it. Caitlin hesitates, but Vi admits it was made by Jinx. Jace proposes the use of force, but the other counselors are unwilling to start a war until all diplomatic avenues have been exhausted. Vi angrily asserts that there can be no diplomacy with Silco, but the council is unwilling to listen, prompting Vi to storm out of the room. She walks out into the rain, but Caitlin tries to stop her. Vi insists that their efforts to reach the council have failed and that she was naive to think things could change. But Caitlin believes there must be another way. Vi compares Piltover and Zon to oil and water, saying her relationship with Caitlin is the same. She tells Caitlin to forget about her and walks away. Victor stands at the docks and lets his crutch clatter to the ground. His bad leg has been completely transmuted into a purple metal. He begins to walk, and though he nearly stumbles, he breaks into a run, something he'd never been able to do before. Back at his lab, Victor prepares to continue transmuting himself into metal, carving runes all across his body. Meanwhile, Sky is approaching, nervously rehearsing ways to ask Victor to take a look at a project she'd been working on. Once again, Victor attempts to inject himself with Shimmer, but after examining the vial, he realizes he's run out of Shimmer. Victor slices his hand open, feeding his blood to the Hex Core, and attempts to go through with the procedure anyways. Sky walks in on him shrieking in pain as the Hex Core violently transforms his flesh. She rushes to his side, attempting to pull him away, but the magic of the Hex Core disintegrates her into ash. Victor faints. He wakes up a short time later, only his hand having been transmuted. He sees that Sky has become a pile of dust on the ground and is heartbroken. In addition, the Hex Core has taken on a fleshier, more organic appearance. Jace begins forging a Hextech weapon, what will eventually become the Mercury Hammer. Vi appears unannounced, and Jace threatens to have her arrested. She berates him for his readiness to throw strangers into a criminal justice system whose consequences he doesn't fully understand. However, they agree that they both want to make Silco pay. Vi dons one of the Atlas gauntlets. Despite being designed for mining, she seems to reckon that they would make decent weapons, likening them to Vander's gauntlets. She suggests that they go against the council's wishes and attack Silco's Shimmer manufacturing facilities. Later, a squad of enforcers helmed by Jace board a train carrying numerous barrels of Shimmer and force it back to its station. The enforcers quickly take control of the production facility and begin arresting workers, many of whom are children. One red-haired boy escapes an enforcer and presses a button triggering the alarm, waking up a squad of chemtanks, people in full-body mesh suits enhanced by shimmer. The chemtanks begin killing enforcers with superhuman speed and strength, eventually surrounding Jace. Vi appears, wearing Atlas gauntlets on both hands, and destroys a chemtank with one massive punch. Together, they begin dispatching the remaining chemtanks. Jace switches into cannon stance and fires furiously, but in his fervor, he mistakenly strikes the red-haired boy. The child falls over a railing and plummets to the ground. A short time later, Jinx and Vi find the boy just in time to watch him die. Caitlin takes a shower, seemingly unable to take her thoughts away from Vi. Eventually, she emerges into the bathroom. Looking into the large, foggy mirror, she slowly realizes that someone has scribbled Jinx's trademark monkey symbol into the condensation. In the reflection, she sees that Jinx's eye is now pink from the effects of shimmer is standing behind her. Jace quietly mourns the red-haired child. Vi attempts to console him, but Jace decides he won't be attacking any more of Silco's facilities. Vi protests. He commands her to return the Atlas gauntlets, but she refuses. He nearly attempts to seize the gauntlets by force, but simply walks away, saying she won't make it alone. Once he's gone, Vi destroys a large machine at the heart of the facility, spilling vast quantities of shimmer onto the ground. Some time later, Silco, Sevica, Rennie, and Finn examine the wreckage of the destroyed facility. Rennie hunches over the corpse of the red-haired child in grief. The boy was her son. The group bemoans Piltover's sudden boldness, saying that this never would have happened if Marcus was still alive. Rennie furiously condemns Silco for allowing this to happen, criticizing his over-reliance on Jinx, who killed Marcus in the first place. Finn gives Sevica a knowing glance, silently encouraging her once more to betray Silco. Victor grieves over Sky's remains, weeping and poring over the stack of notes she left behind. Eventually, he resolves to destroy the hex core, lifting a stool over his head with the intent to smash it. However, he finds himself unable to follow through. As he walks away, the hex core sends a pulse through his body that causes him to fall to the ground, seemingly of its own free will. Ambessa luxuriates on balcony, accompanied by a single guard and receiving a massage from her escort. Mel storms up to her and knocks the glass of wine from her hands, commanding the escort to leave. Ambessa dismisses him and the guard. Mel berates her mother for stirring Jace to violence. Ambessa informs her that the man who killed Mel's brother doesn't believe the score is settled, and that she came seeking to weaponize Hextech in order to protect herself and the Merida family. Mel is appalled, insisting that she is no longer part of the family since Ambessa banished her, and asks why she did it. Ambessa confesses that Mel weakened her. She couldn't endure the look in her daughter's eyes when she made the necessary decisions to keep the family safe. She remains resolute in her quest to weaponize Hextech, offering to take Mel back home if she cooperates. Victor sits on the ledge overlooking the pool of water from his and Sky's childhood. He scatters her ashes, saying he's unsure where she would have preferred. He begins to walk away, but turns back, contemplating throwing himself from the edge. Jace interrupts. He reminisces about their time in the Distinguished Innovators competition, lamenting that everything made sense then. Victor pleads with Jace to destroy the hex core, saying that he's unable to do so himself. He ruminates on the terrible mistakes that the pair have made, saying that they need to make it right. Sevica, Finn, and Rennie barge into Silco's office. Finn lectures Silco for his decline, saying that today is the day he dies. Silco lectures him back, calling him a parasite and berating him for his lack of loyalty. A long, retractable blade emerges from Sevica's prosthetic arm, but instead of killing Silco as planned, she slices Finn's throat. Rennie flees in terror. Silco asks if Sevica had been tempted to kill him instead. She responds, not for a worm like him. Silco examines a letter on his desk, sent from Jace. Silco meets Jace on a rampart overlooking the ocean. He gives Jace a list of demands, including free trade routes, blanket amnesty, unrestricted access to the hex gates, and sovereignty. Jace balks at the list, retorting that Silco wouldn't stand a chance in a war between Piltover and Zaun and claiming that he wants to save Zaun from annihilation. Silco refuses to budge, prompting Jace to make demands of his own, discontinuing the production of Shimmer, returning the Hex Crystal, and handing over Jinx. Silco's only problem is with surrendering Jinx, but Jace is adamant that if he complies, he'll have his nation of Zaun. Echo and Heimerdinger return to the Firelight's alcove. The professor is astonished at what Echo has accomplished in such a brief period, and Echo reveals his secret, saying, it's not enough to give people what they need to survive, you have to give them what they need to live. Silco visits a statue of Vander, bemoaning that it all makes sense now. He grapples with an impossible choice between his dream of an independent Zaun and Jinx, whom he views as his daughter. Unbeknownst to him, Jinx stands behind the statue, listening to Silco's every word, enraged at the notion that Silco might betray her. Vi appears at the last drop, looking for Sevica. Sevica orders the bar's patrons to clear out, And moments later, Vi and Sevika are left alone. They fight for a long while, tearing up the bar in the process. Sevika reveals her blade, which is capable of firing heated waves of energy. Eventually, she pierces through one of the Atlas gauntlets, severely damaging it, and knocking Vi to the ground. Vi is nearly spent, but a memory of Vander convinces her to get back up again as she sheds the damaged gauntlet. As the pair continue to clash, Vi realizes that the gauntlets are capable of producing a magical force field. Sevika doesn't anticipate this, and it gives Vi a window to rip off Sevika's prosthetic arm off and finally knock her out. As Vi recovers, however, Jinx appears behind her, pistol whipping her unconscious. Victor accompanies Jace to a council meeting. Jace tells the council that he is not fit to govern the people of Zaun, nor are any of them. Victor announces that Jace has brokered a peace with Silco in exchange for the Undercity's independence. The other councilors, with the exception of Mel, are furious at the proposal, many leaping from their seats in indignation. Vi wakes up tied to a chair in Silco's old workshop, the abandoned cannery where Milo, Clagger, and Vander died. Jinx explains that, while Silco believes he created Jinx, it was actually Vi's voice in her head that drove her to become what she is now. Vi assures Jinx that the only thing that sustained her in prison was the thought of getting back to her, and promises that they're still sisters. Jinx brings Vi's chair to a dinner table and lights the candles, revealing a macabre mimicry of a lavish meal. Silco sits across from Vi, bound and gagged. Jinx's effigies of Milo and Clagger, as well as the stuffed bunny from their childhood, are also in attendance. Jinx berates Silco for his various lies and betrayals. She brings out a cupcake topped with the stolen hex crystal, and wheels Caitlyn to the table, also bound and gagged. She states that Vi will decide where Jinx sits, referring to one chair labeled Powder and another labeled Jinx. She sets her shock pistol in Vi's bound hands, pleading that if Vi kills Caitlyn, she can have Powder back. Vi refuses, prompting Jinx to retake the gun and aim it at Caitlyn's head. Frantically, Vi promises to take Jinx away and leave all of this behind them. Silco attempts to speak, and Jinx removes his gag. He accuses Vi of lying and promises that he wasn't planning on betraying Jinx. Jinx hears Milo laughing and shoots the Milo dummy in response, breaking a glass. Caitlyn discreetly reaches for the broken glass, hoping to cut herself loose. Silco continues to speak, assuring Jinx that she's his daughter and that he'll never forsake her. Caitlyn breaks free. She picks up Pow Pow and aims it at Jinx, commanding her to drop the pistol. After much hesitation, Jinx places her gun on the table and puts her hands in the air, feigning surrender. Then, empowered by Shimmer with superhuman speed, she rushes Caitlyn, knocking her unconscious and seizing back Pow Pow. Vi pleads with Jinx to wake up, listing off the names of her family, Milo, Clagger, Vander, and their parents. However, this only serves to torment Jinx with twisted, monstrous hallucinations of the people she'd lost. Seeing how Vi is hurting Jinx, Silco furiously struggles to break his bonds. Finally, he grabs the shock pistol and takes aim at Vi, prompting Jinx to blindly fire Pow Pow at Silco, mortally wounding him with a bullet through the chest. Jinx hurries to Silco's side in tears, apologizing profusely. One final time, Silco promises he never would have betrayed her, telling her you're perfect before he dies. Vi attempts to comfort Jinx, but she stops crying and becomes stoic. Slowly, she walks to the chair labeled Jinx and sits down. She explains to Vi that the two of them will never be able to love each other like they used to. Then, she takes the hex crystal and walks away. She loads the crystal into a massive rocket launcher, Fishbones, and fires a missile into the sky. Caitlyn wakes up, too late to stop her. Mal removes her family ring and votes for Jace's proposal. Sevika sits in Silco's office, recovering from her battle with Vi. Echo and Heimerdinger converse avidly. Singe fondles a locket containing an image of a young girl, and looks up to see a bearded man hanging from the ceiling of his lab. Ambessa sees that Mel has vandalized her own painting of the immortal Bastion using gold paint. Caitlyn frees Vi and the pair watch in horror as the rocket sails through the sky. One by one, every counselor votes to support Jace's motion. Finally, the rocket crashes through the window of the council chambers. So that's it and that's all. So if you loved the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let us know in which series you want the next video. Thanks for watching, sayonara.